It's the Morning Star Drive 117.8. You soaring up with sky, now's the time, don't delay. I'm sitting in my ride and it's time to fly. So let's realign, just listen and fill your mind.
Hey guys, how is it going? And welcome to the Morning Star Drive on 117.8. It is Wednesday, September 27th, and so happy for you joining us. We are ready to start another day together with the Lord. So subscribe to us on YouTube, follow us on SoundCloud, and make sure to support us on Patreon. So today we have an exciting podcast for you. We have Health is Happiness, the Foundational Books Word Study, and of course commentaries, updates, and news on what is happening around the world in this history today. Whew. All right, everyone, how are you doing? It is Wednesday. We've got service tonight, so super excited about this too. I hope that you guys have been enjoying your week so far. If you haven't yet, leave a like and comment to build our community. Just super happy for everyone joining us every weekday on the Morning Star Drive. So let's get up, support each other each and every day. This week's Sunday message is Learn from Me, Testify. All right, guys, it is Wednesday. It is hump day, the middle of the week. I can't wait for the Wednesday service. Gonna be exciting. I will be leaving for Atlanta tonight on a red-eye flight. So my flight's at like 10:30 p.m. So I get to go to service. I get to do all the other different things. And then I get to sleep on the plane, wake up and arrive there like 6 a.m. So I like these red-eye flights, although it's a little bit difficult to sleep on the plane. It is. I don't know about you guys. When you guys sleep on the plane, do you sleep for like, how long can you sleep in one shot? Like usually my first sleep is going to be like 3 hours, 4 hours max. And then I can go back to sleep again for like another hour, 2 hours. And then I'll go back to sleep an hour. Like I try to get myself I just don't like being in the plane all cramped up. And then after that, I'm walking around the plane. I walk around the plane. I'm talking to the flight attendants. Just, stretching, talking to the people who are waiting at the bathroom. Like, I don't know. For me, I just need that social contact. I need to stretch and stuff because just being in that seat for so long in a sitting position, for me, it's too hard. It really, really is. It's just difficult for me to be in that position like for that many hours. Thank God this flight is only, I think it's like 4.5 hours, which for me is long. Like now I hate flying because I've flown so much before. Anything over 4 hours is just it's pretty heavy for me, and I'm just like it feels too long for me. Like I love those flights. Like my house to LA, Vancouver to LA is like 2.5 hours, 2.5, 3 max, right? I love those ones. You go to Calgary in like 2 hours or whatever it is. So yeah, going across the country to like New York or Toronto or somewhere further out, yeah, I can't stand. Well, not I can't stand it. It's just it feels very, very long for me. I'm not sure about you guys, because I've been flying, I was doing missions work, and I flew to like over 20 countries, which means that, can you imagine how many trips, how many flights that I took? I took too many flights. And I was reading something on that when they said if you fly a lot, it makes you age faster. Yeah, that's not a good thing. Although I'm aging okay right now, people all think that I look very, very young. I don't think I look young. I think I act young. And because I act young, everyone's like going, "You're 45?" I'm like, yeah, like, oh my gosh, I totally wouldn't have guessed. But yeah, the flights took its toll on my body. It really, really did. But yeah, I don't know about you guys. Do you guys like flying? You guys do? Like long trips. Like I'm going to Korea at the end of next month, and that's going to be like an 11-hour flight. I am not looking forward to that at all. And I'm going during the autumn season into the winter, which is going to be freezing. So I'm a little bit nervous and scared to be going at that time. So I'm going to be flying out of there pretty quickly, I think, because I don't want to be in the winter in Korea. It's just way too cold. Right, especially in Wonmyeong area, there's no way I want to be up there in that altitude either. I don't know. I was talking to someone else yesterday. I was talking to Hee Young, the one who did the testimony, and thank you so much, everyone, for your comments to Hee Young. Remember, she's halfway around the world. I was telling her like, hey, you might be surprised, but there's a lot of comments on your testimony. People really, really like your testimony, and well, she's sleeping right now because it's a different world. Well, the time I am calling right now, it's like 2, 3 a.m. over there, so she won't be getting it, but I'm hoping that she will be responding to them too. She's really, really amazing and sweet person. And yeah, I can't believe, I was talking to her yesterday after she did the testimony, and she heard it herself, and she was kind of embarrassed too, but she's like, oh, she was like very thankful that I put her testimony on. But she was telling me it was 2009 that I did that speech. 2009 in, was it like November or December? So quite interesting. Yeah, so good memories and good friends. And these are people, like it's I think one of the things that we talked about, which was we really, really understand now, is when Sunseem said, just the fact that you're still here means you've done a good job. And remember Sunseem talked about that, was it the time after he came out? Remember? After he came out, people feel bad and they're repenting and this, and that. And Sunseem's like, just the fact that you're still here that means you've done a good job. And we can understand that now more than any other time, what it means to just stick around during this difficult time. And I think it's something that we have to really kind of open our eyes to and say, yeah, that is amazing. Everyone who is still here, like, remember I told you, like, just one of the biggest signs for me that there was a lot of fallout. And it's like, we're all in different regions. We don't know what's going around. We don't know what's going on in other regions and stuff like that too. So it's hard for us to really see the big impact. But for me, because I'm doing this channel and it's like 18 different countries, the biggest thing that I can see that affects was my Patreon. As weird as that sounds, yeah, because I have people supporting me from everywhere. Then all of a sudden it dropped 50 people from like 200 down to like less than 150 supporting on Patreon. And for me, that was the thing, like, wow. So it's more than I thought. The impact is really big, right? So this is why I'm so thankful, even for those people that still stay and support me on Patreon. I'm like, wow, we still have a lot of people remaining, but there was an impact. It was 25% of people left, like on my Patreon alone, which means that's a big chunk of people, right? So just the fact we've stayed, I think I think that is one of the most amazing things that all of us can testify to, is that we stayed. We really stayed. We kept the faith. We stayed strong. We weren't like shaken by all the other different things that were going on. And I really, really hope that all of us will have that. We'll keep this mentality. Like I was talking to Hee Young yesterday, and I think like something came, because we're talking about the restored Eve, right? And we're like going, yeah, that's something that made her struggle a lot. And we're like, yeah, it's something it's a difficult thing for us to kind of grasp, because when you think of restored, it is completely restored, right? It's restored and there should be no problems. How could she leave? How could she do these things? And, it's like, yeah, how does that actually work? But, it kind of brings us back to the reality of what a real, true relationship is. Like a real relationship. Like what is a real relationship of love is not a temporary, it's not a momentary thing. It's not that feeling I have that I'm so in love with this person right now, like I'm having those feelings. Love is an all of the time thing, regardless of how good or bad it gets. Love is something that has to be maintained no matter what. Love is a forever thing. And that's what we're working on here in this history, is learning how to love God through all the times. And if you think about it, all of us here who remain, we are loving God through the most difficult time. If I were to compare this time right now, it's like a time where it's so bad between the husband and wife, like they could get divorced or separated, right? Where it's that bad. But both are sticking around and both truly, truly want to see things through until the end. Like we're going through the most difficult time right now. And the fact that we're staying around, that we're still here, that is something that is really amazing, because it does take energy to stick around when it's difficult, right? It's like, sometimes we think to ourselves like, hey, if just because I stuck around, I didn't do anything. And the answer is you did a lot, because think of all the energy it takes just to push through that difficult time. That takes a lot of energy. And when I thought about this too, it's like, yeah, it's so true. You did do something. Sticking around is doing something. It is choosing, right? Choosing to be here no matter how difficult it gets. And that's why I was like, wow, all of us, we should be patting each other on the back. And I think this is something where God will be so proud of us. And he'll be like, yeah, these people are sticking it through. Even though it's difficult, they're sticking through it, right? And I was thinking about the conversation we had, and it was like, you know what the hardest part would be? Okay, let me get back. No, hold on. So I think the hardest part is actually what Hee-Young was telling me is like, don't you think God's kind of scared? Like when he sees someone like AJ just leave, like the person who's restored, like if this person leaves, don't you think that makes God scared to love because anyone can just leave? You know what I mean? And I'm like, yeah, that's partly true. But then I thought to myself is like, you know what would be even more? I think the scary part is when things are good and people become comfortable and they start to kind of like have like ordinary type of faith. Because like there's this interesting thing I was watching on TV, and you know, there's a lot of different countries. Excuse me, I gotta blow my nose. Give me 1 second. So one thing I was watching on TV is like, you know, there's wildfires going on in Canada, wildfires going on in California. There's wildfires going on in many different, even in Europe and stuff like that too, right? And you look at these wildfires and they're burning, and then you have like these helicopters coming, like dropping like 100 gallons of water onto the fire, and the fire doesn't flinch, doesn't do anything to the fire. And I kind of look at that like, whoa, that's how big that fire is. That you could put 100 gallons, you could put 1,000 gallons on it, and it wouldn't affect the fire, right? And when I was looking at that, the realization I had was this: is like, if your fire of love between you and God is so hot and so big, then during the time of tribulation, no matter how much Satan tries to snuff out the flames of love between you and God, it's like that wildfire. It's so big, even 100, 1,000 gallons doesn't affect the fire at all. And I think that's the same with us too, is, you know, we have to realize is that fire between us and God, like Sunseem has it, you know, he's the perfect example. There's no other example except Sunseem. The love is so fiery that look at him while he's in detainment. Look at him while 10 years in prison. Look at him at that time. All he cares about is his love with God. There's nothing else he cares about. So whatever Satan tries to do, even taking away his number two, like the person he loves so much, he was one with, doesn't flinch, continues to move, of course he's sad. Of course, you know, he's heartbroken, but he keeps pushing forward. And I think one of the things that we have to realize is that a lot of times when things get really good, we become way too comfortable and that fire just kind of simmers down when things are good. But we should be building it even more fiery constantly until it's so big that when the tribulation comes, even when Satan comes to snuff out that fire, it barely moves us. You know what I mean? And I was like, yeah, you know, that's the way that we should be. That's the way our love should be. And I think another realization I had from looking at like, oh, like how is it like the restored Eve? How is the AJ all of a sudden she turned? And those of you guys don't know, I'll probably report about this more detailed next week, but a new article just came out because, you know, AJ is going through her trial and stuff. Yeah, she publicly made her denial of Sunseem. Publicly. It's on the news now. She's like, no, there's only Jesus. Sunseem is nothing, right? He's like, she basically denied everything, right? And before in the past, she would refuse to answer that question. When they asked her, do you think that Sunseem is the one, right? And she said, I'm not going to answer that question, right? But now, full out answer, it's like, no, I was fooled. I was tricked in the past. And now, you know, she basically says, oh, Sunseem did everything, even though I never saw it. And he's, you know, there's only Jesus, no one else. So she made her full, flat out declaration of what she thinks about Sunseem already, right? So when you think about that, she went from, you know, she basically pulled a real Judas from someone who was absolute and strong, bringing other people in faith to make them even stronger, to someone who is absolute denial of the one that God sent. So how does that happen? And I really, really thought about it. I was like, yeah, what does that mean? And the answer wasn't so much like, oh, you know, we're all in danger. It's like, no, it's more of real love has to last forever. Right? It needs to be maintained constantly, even through the difficult times. Because like even for us, it's usually the tribulations and the difficulties that make us doubt, that make us turn our hearts, to make us grow colder and such too, right? It's usually those types of things. Those are the things that totally just wipe us out and the fire just snuffs, right? But we have to realize is, you know, no one is safe from it. yeah, you can reach certain levels, but once you stop maintaining your faith, or once you start to doubt and lose that power and strength and that love towards God because of tribulations, anyone is susceptible, even Sunstein. But when you look at him, he is the ultimate example, never wavering, unchanging. And when you look at him, it's like, wow, okay, that is crazy. How great he is at keeping the faith. And I do think that's something that we have to think about very, very carefully. We do. We got to think about it and say, hey, us too, how is this going to work? How is this going to happen, right? And I really hope that this is something that that we will understand is, yeah, am I trying to scare everyone saying no one is safe? No, the thing I'm trying to say is, this is what love is. Love is eternal. Love never ends. Love doesn't shake when there's tribulation and difficulty. And everyone has to maintain, even Sunstein. We all have to maintain that love, right? And that's what we're learning here on this earth. Now, does that mean that we don't have the feeling? No, I don't think it's about feelings. Because if you look at a husband and wife, they love each other, but they don't feel the love all the time. They don't feel the love when they're arguing and fighting. They don't feel it when they're, having disagreements and such. It's not like that, right? But they still love each other. So I don't think for us too, we can judge our love by how we feel. We judge our love by if we are still there or not. You know what I mean? Like what we're doing right now. Like even now, we're defending Sunstein. Even now, we're like, yes, people say whatever they want. Say whatever you want. You could say whatever you want about Sunstein, but that's not going to affect what I think, right? I know this is a history of God. And I hope it's something that all of us, we can really learn more deeply each and every day, right? So yeah, it was a very, very good and deep conversation that we were talking. Me and Hee-Young were talking about the other day, but I hope that, everyone too, let this be a time. Everyone be open. Like be open. Talk about it. What's going on in your mind? How do you feel? What are you feeling in your heart right now? Right? And I hope that all of us can really have that mentality and mindset. That we'll always have those mental exercises, right? And even with mental exercises, we'll understand where I do the mental exercise to understand where people come from, or to understand true reasoning, but not to doubt and not to say, oh, but what if? No, that's not the what if. I'm not sitting there in a what if situation. Mine is, let's go into a mental exercise, an actual exercise, right? And I think that's something that's very important for all of us to do. It's like, oh, if I thought like this, that doesn't make sense either, right? And this kind of what has to do with the Friday prayer meeting we're talking about is people, we have to repent even if you said something like, even if Sunstein did it, I'd still follow him, right? Which is the wrong way to think. Right? Back at that time, we're thinking, oh yeah, okay, but it's, that it was okay to think that way. But we have to realize is no. Why would we even say that, right? There's no what ifs in this situation, right? So, we can do a mental exercise and think to ourselves is, so if this was the case and this doesn't make sense either. No, why would I even think this way? And those mental exercises help you to kind of open the reasoning in your heart and your mind too, right? So, lots of great things to, I think so many things we can learn from 2023. And it's real. And that's the thing that I thought was, I talked about this last week or the week before. 2023 is the greatest opportunity because there'll never be another time like this where it's this difficult, where we can stand up for Sunstein and where God can look at us and say, oh yeah, they stood up for me. Oh yeah, they were there. Oh, they stuck with me. Oh, they didn't doubt, right? Because other times are not going to be as difficult as this time here. So I hope that all of us too will have that mentality and mindset, and will really, really get ourselves into the position of knowing the opportunity that we have in front of us right now. All right. Oh, by the way, I was talking to my parents yesterday and they talked to me on my toilet and stuff like that. I hope it didn't sound like I was complaining, because I love my parents. I really, really do. Right. And their love for me is so evident in my life. I've already tasted the evidence from the food my mom cooks, or, the fresh cut fruit and vegetables every single morning, which I'm going to miss when I go to Korea. Right. And just being with them, I care and I love them so much. And I can honestly say they love me more than I can understand, right? And it made me realize more about God is like, when I look at my parents, I can't even understand how much they love me, but I realize in the same way, it's with God too, right? God loves me so much more than I can really fully comprehend also. But yeah, they annoy me sometimes. Right? And you can't help it because it's from the people that you love the most is where this type of stuff, you get the most annoyed and stuff like that too, right? Oh, I saw something really cool yesterday on the news, okay? So you guys know I love watching sports, and of course American football I consider the greatest sport in the world. I think it's so much better than soccer or football, whatever you want to call it. American football I think is the best sport in the world by far. It takes the most intellect, right? It takes the most physical, mental power, whatever it is, right? It's like the grandest stage. It makes the most money, and it's just in America kind of thing, right? But I saw something yesterday that has everything to do with this week's message. I was floored by it, right? So, after you have a game, there was like Monday Night Football, and after the games, you have like interviews with the players and stuff, right? So this guy comes to the podium, doesn't take questions, but guess what he does? He starts to testify for Jesus. On the podium, like this is a place where like going, how'd you feel about today's game? Oh, I felt pretty good about this. Oh, are you, what'd you think about this person? The reporters are all asking questions. Doesn't take a question. And the first thing he says is, today is Sunday. It's a day that all of us should be in church and we should be worshiping God. But we play football on Sunday and the fans are worshiping the players instead. They should be in church. So, and this guy's a football player himself. He's a football player. So then he says, well, since everyone missed church, I'm going to give you a sermon, right? I'm going to give you a sermon. So everyone listen up, I'm going to preach. And then he testifies about his story of his daughter, like a week ago, had a seizure for like 30 minutes. Ambulance came, him and his wife were praying for his daughter, and he's praying. He said, God, if this is just the enemy attacking our daughter, get her away from her and let her be better than what she was before, right? And it was like after the hospital, after one day, daughter comes out of a coma, right? Or comes out of the seizure. And even sharper and better, like she's 4 years old. She speaks more clearly. She talks even better than before. And he was just preaching to just on TV, to the masses, to the largest audience, right? Because it's American football, right? Because one thing you have to know about seizures, if you go into seizure too long, you can lose your motor functions, your speech functions, because it has to do with your brain. But daughter, 4 years old, speaks even better than before the seizure. And he basically goes into an altar call. He says, there are people out there right now that are hurting, things that think that things are really bad in their life. But God is knocking on the door of your hearts. And I was just like, what? Right? This guy is using his platform during the week of to testify, and he's preaching about God. I was like floored. No questions. He straight up went into a sermon, right? He went into a sermon talking about how great Jesus is. So I was just like, whoa, right? What do you call it? What a sign for this week's message. And that was Monday night. Right? So that's the day after this week's message came out. So I was like, wow, God, this is real. And I hope to see him give even more sermons in the future. But yeah, this guy is a huge linebacker. He's like, 6'3", 250 pounds, huge, like all muscle, but he's just preaching about God. And it's like, guys, listen up. It's time to hear a sermon because he couldn't go to church today. So I was just like, what a great sign it was. You know what? I'll leave the link in the description for that football player. I thought it was amazing. People should be seeing this. And, he's not the greatest speaker, but just, oh man, I was moved. I was really, really moved by it, right? I'm not sure about you guys, but I feel more power and more strength these days from what is going on. Like from, just all the stuff that's going on, plus on top of it, the words that are being given, right? The word is so strong. Ever since the Learn From Me sermons have come out, man, is it powerful. And all we need to do is just follow. We need to follow, make sure we put the word into action properly and powerfully. Get all those what do you call it? Make sure that we can keep repeating, put the repetition in until the problem is solved. we got to keep praying. Kind of like we're talking about the restored Eve, or people who can, how does someone like that leave? It's because if you stop praying, you're going to lose your love and your faith. If you stop listening to the word, if you stop putting things into action, if you start to doubt in your thoughts and your mind because of what other people are saying or the difficulties that you go to, there's no stopping, right? Anyone can stop because of difficulties and tribulations. Anyone can stop maintaining their faith. Or, while you're going through something, like this is something that I've struggled with too in the past, is like, man, I don't have any savings. I don't have any money. I don't have this. And then you start to feel like, you have to get more in that area. And once you let that in, there's no stopping. There's no stopping it, right? There's no stopping you from Satan using money or using power, using the opposite sex to kind of open that door even more, right? And it just creeps in bit by bit, and that's how people start to go the wrong direction. And I hope it's something that we have to be like that much better, right? We have to be that much better. We have to be that much more stronger in this time of tribulation and difficulty. So yeah, I really, really feel more empowered these days than any other time in 2023. Yeah, like right now is a time I felt the most empowered so far in 2023, and I know it's just going to get better and better. So I'm not sure about you guys. Tell me what you guys think in the comments if you feel even more strength and power now than before. Oh, by the way, remember I told you there was an article that came out about KJS, right? And the trial and stuff. There's one other thing, like someone freaked me out. One of my buddies freaked me out this morning, texted me and said, KJS, like AJ, Joan, right? She was sentenced to 15 years. I was like, what? 15 years in jail? I was like, no way. And I was just checking around. Then I saw the article, and the article isn't she hasn't been convicted. It's the prosecution is asking for Joan to get 15 years in jail. All right. So that's what they're asking for. Then the 4 others is 10 years, and then only 5 years for Kyla because she admitted guilt, right? So that's pretty intense. So the judge is going to be making a decision. I'm not sure how they can make a decision if Sunseem's trial hasn't even been finished yet, but I guess that's just the way the Korean trials work. But yeah, it's that article came out. The prosecution wants 15 years for Joan, 10 years for 4 others, and 5 years for Kyla. So man, I think more of that will probably come out next week too. It probably will, like more news, and maybe the final verdict will come out by next week, and we'll know exactly what happens there too. But yeah, that's pretty intense. It's really unfortunate and sad. It's coming up to this point like this too. So, oh yeah, it's been an eventful week. A lot of news. We probably in the media yesterday we heard those 4 articles happening too. So I hope that all of us are, let's pray. Let's pray even more. Pray for those that persecute us. Love our enemies. Let's make sure we do even better in front of God's eyes. That God can be so confident in us because we're the ones saying that, like, yeah, yeah, God, I love my enemies. Yes, God, I prayed for them. Yes, God, I did all these things like this too. So, like in the most difficult time. And then God can trust us even more for the future. All right. Yeah. Oh, last thing is like, today we're going to go into the foundational books word study. We're going to go into the books called the Didache, right? The Didache. And I'm sure a lot of you guys don't know what the Didache is, right? And it's basically... some people called it the Lord's teaching through the 12 apostles to the nations, right? So it's actually a 1st century document which goes over church governance, church order, and it's like one of the oldest texts in Christianity, right? It's been lost for centuries, but the text maintained like in existence. But yeah, we'll get into that for the next one. These are one of the foundational books. I found this one to be very, very interesting. So we're gonna get into that one a little bit later. Okay. All right. So then let's move into the first break of the day.
of eternal love. In that golden heaven above, from the sunrise to the sunset, even as the moon begins to rise, even as the stars light up the night, we should go on serving God, serving the Holy Spirit. You and I should spend our days like this. I'm on the way to heaven. We have fulfilled God's purpose of eternal love. In that golden heaven above, from the sunrise to the sunset, even as the moon begins to rise, even as the stars light up the night, we should go on serving God, serving the Holy Spirit. You and I should spend our days like this. Here in this world of love, we live faithfully, believing without regret. Life is great, meaningful. Life is awesome when we live this way.
All right, so let's get into today's word study. We're going to go on foundational books. This is a very, very interesting one. They say it's quite important too in Christian history. It's called the Didache. It's spelled like Didache. So it looks like it says Didache, but actually it is pronounced Didache. Okay, so this is a very, very early text of Christianity. They say it's a first century document, but others say that it can be placed as early as 40 AD, right? So, the Didache, it was lost for centuries. And the text maintained kind of like a muted existence, meaning that you never saw the actual document, but it was cited all the time. There was quotes and citations from the Didache from other Christian writings. And then finally, in like the 19th century, they found a nearly complete text of the work, right? So that's pretty crazy that in the 1800s, they finally found like a full, a nearly complete text of it, right? So, some of it, it's not an easy book to look at because there's going to be some controversy on it too, but it's very, very interesting, right? So to the early Christian church, it's super important document. And the Didache all of a sudden kind of faded from mention over the course of the first 1,000 years. Okay, so but then of course through they found pieces of the text and such, and through painstaking like textual work, modern historians have been able to find numerous mentions to the book in ancient lists of canonical books. right? And then you'll find quotations in the church fathers and references in church orders composed in later centuries, right? So citations to the Didache were also present in Byzantine Christian works as late as the 14th centuries, which is quite interesting that the Didache is being cited until like the 1300s, right? Now, though it's doubtful these authors had access to the full text, in the Christian West, the book was all but lost to history, but its contents having been incorporated into or supplanted by Latin canons and other texts, right? So the Didache's existence was widely accepted in the 19th century, and it was not until 1873 that the Greek Orthodox Metropolitan discovered a 120-leaf manuscript in the monastery of the Holy Sepulchre located in Constantinople. Now, completed in 1056 AD by a copyist calling himself Leon the Notary and Sinner, the volume contained numerous ancient works, including a nearly complete copy of the Didache. Subsequent investigatory work by historians unveiled another early, albeit incomplete text of the Didache, this one written on parchment leaves of a miniature codex that was finally published in 1922, but scholars have dated this version of the text to the 4th century. Now, without going too long on the small details of text criticism and scholarship, there have been further manuscript discoveries in other languages, and they have allowed for a complete, but sometimes contested, right, by scholars, text of the Didache to be restored, and thus further opening access to the principles and practices of the early Catholic Church for contemporary Christians, right? So it's very, very interesting book. It's been lost for a while. It's been accepted that it exists, but it's not something where people have been like, it's not something where there has been a full script until the 19th century, or a near full script, right? So Didache, the actual meaning of the word Didache, it just means teaching, right? Or the teaching, right? And it's kind of like, in short, a name, the name they'll use for like a Christian manual, right? That was kind of put together before 300 AD, right? And like I said, the full title is The Teaching of the 12 Apostles. And some Christians actually thought the Didache was inspired, but the church rejected it when making the final decision which books to include in the New Testament. So the Didache was considered, but in the end, it was not put into the New Testament. Now, the Didache is interesting because it contains like instructions for Christian groups, and its statement of belief may be the first written statement of belief, and it has 4 parts. The first part of the book is 2 ways: the way of life and the way of death. The second explains how to perform rituals like baptism, fasting, communion, and the third covers ministry and how to deal with traveling teachers. The 4th part is a reminder that Jesus is coming again, with quotations from several New Testament passages, which exhort Christians to live godly lives and prepare for that day, right? So it's interesting because it's like a manual. It's like something that people have really wanted in the past, is a manual of how to do things properly, right? It even goes into things like abortion. It does, right? This Didache also says that abortion is absolutely wrong. It should never be done, right? So so if you think about this manual, which is dated in the first, a 1st century document, already talked about abortion, right? It already talked about it. It talks about how to do baptism, right? Like you have to do it, it has to be with running water. If you do not have running water, then baptize in still water, but the water should be cold. If you don't have cold water, then use warm. If you have neither, then just pour water on the head 3 times in the name of the Father. So it's very, very practical. Yeah, it should be running water. If you don't, then use still. If you don't have this, then use this. And if you don't have this much, just pour the water over the head, right? And it also says that both the one who is baptized and the one who baptizes should fast beforehand. It's very, very detailed. Right? Like they talked about prayer and fasting. Don't fast like hypocrites. Right? Hypocrites will fast on Monday, and then the Thursday, they said they fast. No, so don't fast like the hypocrites. They fast on Monday and the Thursday. You should fast on the Wednesday and Friday. You should not pray like the hypocrites either, but as the Lord commanded in His gospel. And then it goes into the Lord's Prayer. Right? It talks about the Eucharist, right? How you should give the first, how to give the cup and the broken bread, right? It's very detailed. No one should eat or drink the Eucharist at Thanksgiving unless they that have been baptized in the name of the Lord. So they have to be baptized first, right? Do not give what is holy to dogs. So you have to give people only who are baptized, right? And then it tells you how to give thanks to God. It's really detailed. I was really shocked seeing some of the things it teaches, right? And it says, like when it talks about teachers, apostles, and prophets, it says like, listen to anyone who comes to teach you such things as these. But if a teacher is led astray and teaches a different doctrine that undermines what you've been told, do not hear him. However, if he comes to the increased righteousness and the knowledge of the Lord, receive him as you would the Lord. You should treat apostles and prophets as the gospel commands. Receive every apostle that comes to you as you would the Lord, but he must not stay more than 1 day, or 2 if necessary. But if he stays 3 days, he is a false prophet. Interestingly, right? When an apostle leaves you, give him nothing except bread until he finds shelter. If he asks for money, he is a false prophet. Do not test or evaluate any prophet speaking in the Spirit. This is the one unforgivable sin. Right? But not everyone that speaks in the Spirit is a prophet, only those who live in the way of the Lord. Thus, it is by their conduct that you can tell false prophets from true. Isn't that interesting? Back then, in like 1 or 2 days is fine. To stay with someone 3 days, they're a false prophet. If you just give them bread, if they ask for money, they're a false, like there's like certain things back in those days that are considered faux pas, right? Like this is the wrong thing to do, right? And like it tells you things like, no prophet shall eat while he is in the Spirit. If he does, he's a false prophet. Even if a prophet teaches the truth, if he does not do what he teaches, he is a false prophet. However, if a prophet that has been approved and found true and lives out the cosmic mystery of the church does not teach you to do all that he does himself, you should not judge such a prophet. His judgment must be left to God. For the prophets in the past also did such things. If anyone says in the Spirit, give me silver, or asks for anything else, do not listen to him. But if he tells you to give to others that are in want, let no one judge him. Interesting, right? Receive everyone who comes in the name of the Lord. When you have tested them, you will know them, for you will be able to discern true from false. If the one who comes as a traveler, if the one who comes is a traveler, assist him as well as you can, but he should not stay with you more than 2 days, or 3 if necessary. But if he is a craftsman who wishes to settle with you, let him work for his bread. If he has no trade, use your discretion to provide a way for him to live as a Christian among you, but not in idleness, right? Lots of different things here, right? There's a lot of different things here. So it tells you how to tell between a false prophet and a true prophet. This is something that I think is very, very necessary, like especially back then when the church was just starting. That's why I think it's very necessary even right now too, right? He talks about Sunday worship. On the Lord's Day, come together, break bread, and give thanks, having first confessed your sins so that your sacrifice may be pure. Anyone who has a dispute with another must not join your assembly until they have reconciled, so that your sacrifice may not be defiled. Right? That would be something that's quite interesting is if you have a problem with someone, you cannot join the assembly until it's reconciled. It would make people want to reconcile these differences, right? And they're like going, yeah, because God wants a pure sacrifice. But if the whole group is not united in one, how can God accept that? Right? Church leaders. Look at this one. Church leaders. There's some stuff on church leaders. Right? Appoint for yourselves bishops and deacons worthy of the Lord, men who are meek and not lovers of money, who are true and approved, because they also perform the service of prophets and teachers to you. Do not despise them, for they are worthy of honor alongside prophets and teachers. Right? It says, reprove one another, not in anger, but in peace. Right? So, you want to hold each other accountable. If one of you does wrong to another, do not speak a word to him until he repents. Interesting. Your prayers, your giving to the poor, and all your deeds should be done in accordance with the gospel of our Lord. Then it talks about, the very end, it talks about the end times, right? And it's be careful how you live. Do not let your lamps be quenched, nor your loins ungirdled, but be ready. for you do not know the hour our Lord will come. Meet together frequently, pursuing what is good for your souls. For your whole time as a believer will come to nothing if you are found to be imperfect at the end time. In the last days, the false prophets and corrupters shall multiply, and the sheep will be turned into wolves, and love will be turned into hate. As lawlessness increases, they will persecute and betray and hate one another, and then the deceiver of the world will appear as a son of God, performing signs and wonders, and the earth will be delivered into his hands. He will do things more unholy than any since the beginning of the world. Right? So all of humanity shall come to the first of testing, the fire of testing, and many will fall and perish, but all who endure in their faith shall be saved from the curse. Then the signs of the truth will appear. Firstly, a rift in the heavens and the sound of a trumpet. And of course, it goes into the rapture and stuff like that too. Right? Very, very interesting. So like the Didache, I think that's something that we could actually learn from if you really think about that. We can learn from that. Actually, an actual manual of how all the things actually are supposed to happen, right? How to treat each other, what we should do for services and stuff like that too. For me, I was just like, wow. Like that is something that I think a lot of people kind of look forward to. It's not, I don't, like, even though we're in the time period of love and Shimjung, that's a dangerous thing to rely on. Just like, oh, the Spirit told me this. Oh, the Spirit told me this. Oh, that you have. Oh no, I just, if we get too deeply into the revelation receivings and go in that style, it's very, very hard to discern between what is right and what is wrong. Like we do need at least a dedicated guideline, and I think that's important. But this Didache was just that. And the more and more I kind of looked into it, I was like, oh, this is quite interesting. And I'm sure there are things that might be controversial. I haven't read them yet, but I looked at it and say, wow, that's pretty impressive that they have this type of thing. So that's what I found to be quite interesting. Either way. So there it is, guys. That is the book, The Didache. The Didache, okay? And it was commonly used in the early Christian church, especially in the first century. Right, used a lot, right? How to bring the church back into order. And of course, times have changed, right? Society has changed, times have changed. You can't do it exactly the same way as that prescribes because it's different. Like when it says only 2 days, 3 days, you're a false prophet. Does that mean like, if, think about this, Sunsteam comes to your church and he's going to be there for 4 days. Does that mean you should, Sunsteam, I'm sorry, we can only let you in for 2 days? Like, that doesn't make sense either, right? So, for me, I'd be like, oh, Sunsteam, you can stay longer. I'd be like, you can stay for a month. Yeah, I'd be thinking that instead. But, yeah, I think it does have to be revised for each time period and for each society and situation it is too. But I think the general gist of it makes sense too. Either way. All right, so there it is, guys. That is foundational books, another word study on foundational books, and we went into the Didache this time. All right, so let's move then into the second break of the day.
Don't worry if you get no signs, 'cause everything will be alright. Promise me you won't leave me in the dark. Yeah. You asked if I had no regrets. I smile 'cause I only feel blessed to be with you. This love will never go away. I'll stay by you until the end, 'cause we're partners in crime, like we're Bonnie and Clyde. And there's nothing that will get in our way, 'cause you're my only one. My heart will stay the same. Only one. I promise I won't change. Only one. My heart will stay the same. Only one. I promise I won't change. I
Okay, so let's get into our final segment on this Wednesday podcast. And of course, we have Health is Happiness. I'm super grateful and thankful for all the people contributing to this. Last week, we had Yen Yu from Singapore, and she did a segment on cardio training. So I hope you guys really enjoyed that. And it gives you a lot of good advice on cardio training. And this week, we're going to go into one of her latest ones. I think this is a repeat also, but this is strength training. And I think this is something that a lot of us, especially the guys, are really into too. So I hope you guys really enjoy this. This is Yen Yu over there in Singapore. And this is her segment on strength training. So everyone, please welcome all the way from Singapore. This is Yen Yu with Health is Happiness.
Hello everyone, my name is Yuan Yu and I'm from Singapore, currently studying physiotherapy and am in my final year. For today's topic on Health is Happiness segment, I'll be speaking on strengthening training. I'd like to give thanks to the Holy Trinity for this opportunity, as well as Pastor Sky and Julius for this platform. As a disclaimer, this is general health advice. If you have any existing medical conditions or any questions, do seek for professional advice. Firstly, why am I talking about this? Well, in order to have a physically active lifestyle, there are three very important aspects. Firstly, strength exercises to improve muscular fitness. Secondly, cardiovascular or aerobic exercises to improve cardio fitness, also known as heart fitness. And number three, reducing sedentary activity. Today, I'll emphasize more on strength and we'll talk about cardio exercise in a future episode. Then, why talk about strength? Why not just do cardio, right? As we grow older, we naturally will lose muscle mass at approximately 3 to 8% per decade after the age of 30, and this rate of decline increases even more after the age of 60. Loss of muscle mass increases our vulnerability to injury and is accompanied by a progressive increase in fat mass and change in body composition. Wow, who knew that there were such negative effects, right? Also, strength training would therefore help to maintain or increase the amount of muscle we have and avoid this natural decline of muscle mass. One other thing that happens with age is that our bones become more brittle, but strength training can prevent this from occurring. Then, moving on to the how. According to the ACSM guidelines, which are the American Council of Sports Medicine guidelines, the gold standard, the good ones to go by, it is recommended to do strength on at least 2 non-consecutive days of the week. And on each session, to do 8 to 12 repetitions of 8 to 10 different exercises that target major muscle groups. Why 8 to 12 reps? This is the range to aim for the purpose of strengthening. Then for each set of exercise, it is to do it for 1 to 3 sets. And between each set, you can rest for 1 to 2 minutes. Besides strengthening, there are other aspects of training like hypertrophy, which is what many bodybuilders do, endurance, power, which have their own set of recommended reps, sets, and rest time, which I won't delve more into today. A general rule of thumb is that it is always good to work on strengthening for at least a period of 6 to 8 weeks before training other aspects like power. This is because it takes that amount of time for the body to see improvements. However, one can also focus mainly on strength and need not delve into other aspects as mentioned above. Then, how much weight should we carry, like the dumbbells at the gym? It is to aim for a load where you can do between 8 to 12 reps with good form, such that the next rep that you do, you will not be able to maintain good form or you will start to shake a lot. Aim for slow and controlled movements as well, such as when you do a squat, you want to take 1 second to go down, 1,000, and 1 second to come back up into standing, another 1,000. And this would lead to each rep taking up to 2 seconds. For these strengthening exercises, you can either do them with body weight, you can do them with free weights, which includes dumbbells and kettlebells, you can do them with resistance bands, weight machines, or even self-made free weights, such as household items like water bottles, bags filled with books, rice, etc. One question that people may have is when to use free weights and when to use weight machines. Both of them are suitable in strength training, but weight machines are generally easier to use and tend to be more suitable for those starting out with strength training. Using free weights is more suitable for someone who has been doing strength training for a while and has developed their muscular fitness. This is because using free weights is harder and you need to have more control as compared to weight machines. Think about using a leg press machine where you just need to push in one direction versus doing a squat with a barbell where not just pushing off with your legs, but you also need to maintain good form, which is harder to do so. Moving on, I will talk about some examples of a strength program. You can broadly split up the exercises based on lower body, core or back, and upper body exercises. And I'll share some variations as to how you can progress and make them harder. As to how to do them, there are many good resources online such as YouTube, Instagram, etc. And it will be quite difficult for me to share this through the podcast verbally, but in the future, I personally do want to create a exercise video bank which can demonstrate some of the key ways to perform the exercise correctly. Before doing strength, it is recommended to do some kind of warm-up. For instance, a 5-minute brisk walk, a jog, dynamic stretching, doing some of the exercises that you will do with weights without the weight, just with your body weight. For instance, if later on you're going to do squats, today is leg day, you're going to do squats with the barbells, then as a warm-up, you can do the squats with a lighter weight or just with your own body weight. Doing this would prepare the body to lift heavier weights and reduce the risk of injury. Just like how before you use the car, you need to warm it up for a short period of time. Now, moving on to the exercise and variations. Firstly, for the lower body, you can do things like squats, deadlifts, and lunges. And one instance of variation is that you can start with body weight squats, and if that is too easy, you can carry a weight with you, such as a dumbbell, a barbell, or if you do not have weights, you can also try single leg squats. Then moving on to core and back exercises. For the core, you can do things like crunches, dead bug. Dead bug. So a bug that is dead, that's the name of the exercise. And one other exercise that's really good is called the Payloft press. Payloft press. One example of variation is that for crunches, you can start with body weight crunches and then you can hold on to a weight around your chest area. For the back exercises, some examples include Superman back extension, pull-ups, bent over barbell rows. And one instance of variation is you can start with Superman back extensions and then move on to doing pull-ups by jumping up to reach the bar and then slowly lowering yourself. And then move on to pull-ups with the help of a resistance band to make it easier. And then finally moving on to a standard pull-up. Next, for the upper body, some examples for chest exercises is doing push-ups, bench presses. And one example of variation is doing a push-up against the wall first, then doing a push-up on your knees, and then doing the standard push-up where you're only in contact with the ground on your toes and your hands. And to make things even harder, you can put your legs on a elevated surface. Then for the shoulder muscles, one example is doing lateral raises. You can start off with using light weight like 1 kg on each hand and then move on to 2 kg, 3 kg, so on and so forth. And for arm muscles, biceps and tricep muscles specifically, you can do bicep curls, you can do overhead tricep extension, and you can do dips. So from this group of exercises, you can pick 8 to 10 of them to start off with your strength training program. As to when to progress, you want to aim to do the current workload well, and you're able to do 1 to 2 reps more than your desired number on 1 to 2 training sessions. To be safe, if you're starting out, then yes, you can be able to do the current workload plus 1 to 2 reps for 2 training sessions before carrying on. The key is to gradually progress and not to do too much too fast, as that is more likely to cause injury. And ways to progress for strengthening is you can increase the reps, increase the amount of weight, reduce the rest time, and do change one variable at each time. During exercise, do monitor how you're feeling. It is normal to have muscle ache, which can go away only in 2 to 5 days, but anything more than that, anything sharp pain, any breathlessness, giddiness, lightheadedness, cold sweats, chest pain, do take a break before you continue, but if it persists, do cease the activity and seek for medical advice. Last but not least, I'll end off with some proverbs on strength exercise. This first one is from a book that Sunsin wrote previously about living a healthy life, and the proverb says, if a person uses his body as it is without training, it will be weak because it is not trained. As a result, even the slightest rise in heat and cold temperatures will result in colds and sickness. It has a hard time because it is so susceptible to the effects of the environment. It becomes anxious and suffers even at the slightest trouble. That is why you must strengthen your physical constitution by training and strengthening your body. The next two proverbs come from 2022 November pre-dawn proverbs. The second one says, make yourself and make the environment while enduring countless difficulties. Only then will you gain, enjoy, and live comfortably as much as you have worked hard. Then exactly what to work on? The next proverb says, anyone who has trained and strengthened his body, mind, and spirit will do things to the end and therefore will easily succeed. Therefore, let's all strive to develop ourselves both physically and spiritually. Take care, everyone, and we'll meet all of you during the next episode. Goodbye.
And that's a huge thank you to Yuanyu for that wonderful segment on strength training, on health is happiness. Hope you guys really benefit and enjoy this too. I am always because I'm working out all the time, almost every single day, and I enjoy these types of contents because it helps me with my training too. So everyone, I hope that you guys will get more fit, well-trained both in strength and cardio, and hope that everyone has an amazing and awesome day. Yes, it is Wednesday. Everyone enjoy the service tonight, and we'll see you guys again tomorrow on the Morning Star Drive on 117.8.
It's the Morning Star Drive 117.8. You soaring up with sky, now's the time, don't delay. I'm sitting in my ride and it's time to fly, so let's realign. Just listen and feel your mind.
I'm burning with desire and the passion. Nobody can stop me when I'm like this. I got my head in the zone, you know. I'm on the Morning Star Drive, you know. I'm burning with desire and the passion.